Okay, today we're reviewing how to simplify radicals, which is something that you probably, hopefully remember from Algebra 1, but in case you don't, we're going to go over it. So let's start with some easy ones. The square root of 36. Hopefully you remember the square root of 36, that's a perfect square, is 6. And the reason why the square root of 36 is 6 is 36 breaks down, if you're factoring it, it's 6 times 6. Interesting, I have two 6's as my factors. Okay, next one. 2 times the square root of 81. Well, the square root of 81 is 9, so that would be 2 times 9, which is 18. And the square root of 81 is 9, because 81 is 9 times 9. Interesting. Are you seeing a pattern? Next one. 3 times the square root of 64. The square root of 64 is 8, so 3 times 8 is 24. You might be wondering, why is the square root of 64 8? Well, 64 is 8 times 8. So, if you're squaring a number, you're multiplying it times itself. So like 6 squared is 6 times 6, 36. 9 squared is 81. 8 squared is 64. The square root is the reverse of that. Instead of multiplying something by itself, you're rooting it. You're undoing the square. So I'm looking for these pairs, two factors that are the same. So the steps for simplifying radicals is, first you're going to take the number underneath your square root. It's called the radicand, but it's just the number underneath the square root, and you're going to break it down and make a factor tree. So 80 is 8 times 10. And I want to factor it until I either get some perfect squares that start to repeat, or like I have all prime numbers and I can't break it down any further. So 8 is 4 times 2, and 10 is 2 times 5, and then 4 is 2 times 2. So I can't break it down any further. Those are all prime numbers. I can't factor them any further. Then step 2 says I'm going to circle my pairs. So I have a pair of 2's and I have another pair of 2's. Step 3 says I'm going to pull one number from each pair. So I'm going to pull one of the 2's out. Then I'm going to pull another one of the 2's out. Because I have two pairs of 2's, two pairs that I circled. And then I'm going to multiply. But then a number that's not circled, so our poor 5, oh my gosh, it's so sad. Our poor 5 didn't have a buddy. Has to stay inside the radical. So that 5 cannot leave the radical, the square root. It has to stay inside. So now my last step is I'm just going to simplify it. 2 times 2 is 4 root 5. Square root of 80 simplifies to 4 root 5. Let's work some examples. Okay, 75. 75, I think 75 is a multiple of 25. 3 times 25 gives me 75. Oh, how nice. 25 is 5 times 5. That's a perfect square. So if I circle my 5's, I'm going to write one of the numbers that I circled outside, which I also should hopefully know that the square root of 25 is 5. And then remember that poor number that doesn't have a buddy, he doesn't get circled. He has to stay underneath the radical. So the square root of 75 is 5 root 3. Okay, 128. Well, 128, I can't really think of any numbers off the top of my head that go into 128. But I do know that since 128 ends in an even number, it's going to have to be an even number itself. So 128 is even, and so 2 has to be one of its factors. So 2 times what gives me 128? 2 times 64. Well, how lucky are we? 64 is a perfect square. 64 is 8 times 8. the square root of 64 is 8, it can come outside. But then, the 2, I don't know what the square root of 2 is. That's not a perfect square. So the 2 has to stay underneath the square root. Okay, 384. Woof, they're getting bigger. 384, if it's divisible by 2, is 192. But maybe it's divisible by 4. So 384 divided by 4 is 96. Okay, we'll go with that. And then I'm going to break 96 down. 96. Let's see if 4 goes into 96. Aha, it does. 4 goes into 96. 4 times 24 is 96. And then 24 is 4 times 6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and circle a pair of 4s. And then I'm going to take that 4 out. Ooh, bless. My touch screen works beautifully in some places, and then on other parts of my screen it gets really flaky. Let's try it again. I don't know. It just must be this spot on my screen right here. That's so pathetic. Let's try it again. Okay, so I circled this 4, so I'm taking one of the 4s out. Okay. Then this 4 down here breaks down to 2 and 2, so I can circle the 2's. The square root of 4 is 2. And then remember, I'm going to multiply those. And then, so sad, the 6 breaks down to 2 and 3. Neither the 2 nor the 3 have a buddy, so they both have to stay underneath. And I'm going to multiply the numbers underneath the square root as well. So this final answer is 8 root 6. Okay, 540 is 54 times 10, and then 54 is 9 times 6, and 10 is 2 times 5. Well, 9 is a perfect square root. I have a pair of 3s, so I'm going to pull out a 3. Then 6 is 3 times 2, so I have a pair of 2's. And then I'm left with this 3 that doesn't have a partner and this 5 that doesn't have a partner. So 3 times 5 is 15. They have to stay underneath the square root. And so my final answer is 6 root 15.